Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Industry Night with me, Nycci Nellis, the show that takes you on the deep dive of the happenings in and out of the industry. So if you're new here, hi, thanks so much for joining us. If you're old here, hi, thanks so much for coming back. Just a little bit about me so you always know where I'm from and what I'm doing and why you want to tune in to a show like mine. So I've been covering the DC food, wine, and hospitality scene for over 21 years now. It all started with the list, areyouonit.com, the online e-zine that tells you about every single happening in the DC metro area, every party, every opening, every gala, every drop of wine, and every shaker full of cocktails. It's all in there. You want to check out the buzz column for everybody's promotion, the behind the counter for little sneaks behind what's happening with people in the industry, and of course the calendar, which tells you about every event. You want to listen on Sundays to my husband, David Nellis, and I. We do Foodie and the Beast. He's the beast. I'm the foodie. We've been doing that show for 15 years now. It's the only food and wine variety show in DC, so definitely check that out. Of course, you follow me on social at NYCCINELLIS on all the social media platforms. And this show, Industry Night, now in its 7th year, and on YouTube. So some of you may be listening and some of you may be watching, so thanks so much. Okay, so if you're watching or listening, you can see that I am still at Tony and Joe's. I'm so excited to be here. Greg Casten is such a huge supporter of me and the show. So a bit about Tony and Joe's. It is patio season, but what I hate about spring in DC is that last week when I was here, it was legit patio season, and today it's like 30 degrees outside. So it looks like I could be on the patio, but I can't because it's cold out. But hopefully next week, it will be still gorgeous in this city with the beautiful cherry blossoms. And you want to find me and yourself sitting on the patio here at Tony and Joe's. There are boats going by on the glistening Potomac water. You want to have a glass of rosé or maybe Chablis or one of Mary Taylor, my guest coming on the show in just a little bit, her wines. Shucking some oysters and just watching the people come by. That's what I love about this space. Greg Casten was supposed to join me today. I don't know where he is, but I'm not going to hold it against him because I know he'll come back at some point in time. So I'm going to be chatting with the Mary Taylor of Mary Taylor Wine. So she's a fascinating woman because for the entire span of her professional career, she's been in all aspects of wine, from selling it. She's also been into cheese, importing it, distributing it. But she also lived in France and learned about all the mechanisms of wine. So I'm so looking forward to talking to her because fast forward now, Mary Taylor Wine is the largest self-funded female wine importer in the United States. And if you don't know Mary Taylor, you are about to. But first, a little bit about me and where I've been, because I love to always tell you about all the eating I've been doing. So I did go to Bellows. There's one in New York. It's a Mediterranean restaurant. It's splashy. It's dashy. And oh my God, is the scene super spicy and hot. The food's not spicy. The food is okay. You're not going for the food. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people aren't going to like that I said that. The food is perfectly fine, but if you want good Mediterranean food in this city, there's a lot of really good places to go. But if you're looking for a scene, then you want to go to Bellows. Like, really good looking people, yes, in DC, all dressed up. The girls look great. The guys do too. There's an amazing DJ, and they do have very good wines for me, and cocktails if you like that thing. Anyway, so definitely worth checking out. You will find me at the bar because I love a scene. I did go to Tail Up Goat. I know I talked about them recently because they've just launched a tasting menu. Jill and Belle are like two of my favorite people, but they are now doing tasting menu only, which at first I was kind of unhappy about because I just like to sit at the bar and eat their food and especially their bread and pasta. But they are doing a tasting menu now. You can sit at the bar and do a la carte. The wines are still fabulous. And honestly, the tasting menu was pretty spectacular. Definitely worth checking out. And I went to Pastis. It's been a minute since they opened, and I went back to check them out. And it's delicious. And it is a little sceney, but not as much as Bellows. And I do love the Croque Madame personally put an egg on anything, especially with ooey gooey bechamel and cheese, and I'm all about it. And nobody does it quite like Stephen Starr. So that's where I've been. That's what I've been doing. And now I'm going to talk with Mary Taylor. So Mary Taylor Wine is the largest self-funded female wine importer in the United States. I have so many whats, I have so many hows, I have so many wheres. So hi, Mary.
Hi.
Hi.
You just mentioned a few friends of mine.
I have no doubt. I saw you light up when I said Bill and Jill.
Yeah, I love Bill. I don't know Jill as well, but I've done a bunch of things at Revelers Hour.
Mm-hmm.
Last year we did a road show with all of our growers. They came to DC.
Oh, cool.
And there was 250 people packed the house at Revelers Hour.
Okay, I just want to say for the record, I'd like to know why I wasn't invited, but we could discuss that off air.
We hadn't met yet.
Okay. So let's start back.
Yeah.
You grew up in Massachusetts,
Mm-hmm.
and where did your love of, because you were a cheesemonger, where'd your love of food, cheese, wine, like let's get into how it all began.
Yeah, great. I love this story. I grew up in Concord, Massachusetts, which is
maybe I say Concord.
Yeah,
you say Concord.
Concord, New Hampshire, maybe. I don't know. Concord. We're right outside the accent belt. I don't know if you know about that, but
I do.
We skipped the Boston accent there. But Concord's one of the prettiest towns. I mean, it's just idyllic. And my father's was an associate professor of literature. My mom was a waitress at Howard Johnson's.
Mm-hmm.
I was the fourth of 4 kids. And
so you're the baby.
Yeah, and we struggled, and struggling in a town where all your friends are extremely wealthy was kind of interesting. And in our house, we had like Chef Boyardee level food, and I would go to friends' houses, and they'd be like, the mom would be braising something, and I could smell the garlic, and I was like, wait a second,
what is happening here?
Right. So I made it my mission in life to just explore food. So I was lucky. I got a job at 14 as a cater waiter, but for a woman that was very much like Martha Stewart in our town.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in all these kitchens, chopping, making stuff, setting up beautiful parties. And then I would work after school at the cheese shop. And so at 15 years old, I was working at the Concord Cheese Shop, which is also a wine store.
Okay.
And I wasn't allowed to ring up the wines. I think I had to be 18. But the ladies would come in and ask for Muscadet and Macon, and I was paying attention to what they were saying.
Mm-hmm.
But this cheese shop, it's still there. It's amazing. They have stacks of cheese on the counters. Actually, the health department is threatening to make them put it behind like a refrigerated case. So I'm like on the mission to stop that.
Absolutely.
Because it's just like the classic old cheese shop. There's nothing more charming. And I really recommend everybody go there.
But what was it about? I mean, there's working at a cheese shop, right? And being like, yeah, I like cheese. But what enticed you to understand the flavors, the differences, the history, the narratives that went with the cheese? Because that's not a lot different than wine.
Well, totally. I mean, being from like a professor's daughter and we used to have like word games, and I was really interested in just like language. Mm-hmm. And so the language of cheese, it's so vast. I mean, you have like Holland and Germany and France and America. So like learning the lexicon, cheese is basically cow, sheep, or goat. Mm-hmm. But within those genres, you have thousands of different flavors and tastes,
right?
And they're all according to pretty much where they come from.
Mm-hmm.
So I found that really interesting. You could like cow milk cheese. You can have hundreds of flavors,
right? But the cow milk cheese that you get from, let's say, Wisconsin, for example, will be entirely different in taste, texture, smell, all the things than something you would get from the
Alps.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, totally.
Cows in the Alps.
And even within Wisconsin, there's like lots of different nuances.
Right. Because it's not just production, it's also terroir. Like there's multiple things happening.
Right. And that I try to explain to people when I try to explain terroir to Americans. And it's not that we're dumb, it's that we had prohibition. And we lost a whole verbiage around wine. But Americans can understand terroir when I explain it via cheese. Because there's so many flavors, and it's all about where it comes from.
But I think I I think when it comes to an animal ingesting something, right? Like a cow eating grass,
Right.
or whatever sheep is eating, or whatever the goats are eating. I mean, I'm sure they're all eating grass, but it's like grass and grubs and,
right.
you know, or.
But what's the elevation?
Right.
What type of time of year? What's the tradition? What's the microclimate? Is it like a cold place? Is it a warm place? You know,
right.
The flowers, the color of the cheese is based on the time of the year. I mean, it's just like,
there's so many things.
Soft, hard.
How do we not have cheese on the table right now? Okay, so you started in cheese, but at what point did that? At what point did they let you sell the wine? Like, when did it translate for you?
Yeah, so I worked in Boston at several restaurants. I worked for Seth and Cherry Woods at Metropolis Grills. You know, they had Aquitaine. I think it's still there. I date myself. This is like 1995, 96.
Okay, so I was there. I was in Boston from 87 to 92.
Okay.
I
was, just kind of getting into rest. I worked at the Boston Harbor Hotel. I dated a guy who was like all around foodie chef guy, and we went everywhere. And so I was like running around serving Chalk Hill Chardonnay to rich people at the outdoor cafe.
Right.
And I didn't know much. I remember he brought home a bottle of Opus One. And I was like 20 years old, and we drank it, and we drank it over hours just to savor every sip. And I thought, I didn't know anything about wine at that point. But so I got a job. I was a literature major at Boston College, and I got a job. This is so random, but right out of college for Elie Wiesel, the Nobel laureate and Holocaust survivor. I was his executive assistant, and the Boston University, isn't that interesting?
Yes, I know.
Crazy.
We're all like, what?
I know, the Boston.
That's nowhere in your bio.
No, it's on my LinkedIn page. The Boston University office of theology said, Professor Wiesel could use a new assistant in New York.
Wow.
Do you want to move to New York? And I was like, do I? Like, that was a really big move, because I was never going to leave Boston. I had a boyfriend. I was just going to be like a townie kind of there.
Right.
And I just up and moved to New York. And it was September 4, 2001 that I got there.
Wow.
So a week later, 9/11.
Sure.
Yeah. So the job was very stressful and very intense. And
I have no doubt.
He said my French wasn't good enough, and he was always kind of complaining at me, and I don't think it really worked for us as his assistant. I'm not very fancy. So I didn't, part of my job was like getting the watch fixed or the jewelry or ordering dinner. And I'm just not that person.
Okay.
I'm much better as like the boss than the assistant, I think. But it was fine. I had learned so much, and I got to like speak to Jacques Chirac's secretary and things like that a lot. But I left that job, and at the beginning of 2002, I got a job at Sotheby's wine department.
Wow. Which
is like really fancy. And
yes, really fancy. Like, I'm sort of fascinated because you keep insisting that you're not fancy, and yet you keep finding yourself in fancy situations.
I'm a foodie. That's
right?
the thing. Like, I love the aesthetic of food, and I interview well, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was interested. I actually got a job in fashion or wine, and fashion paid $20,000 more. The job at Sotheby's paid $28,000 a year in New York City. Even though it was 20 years ago, it was still like...
Oh, no, that's rough.
Real rough. And
so
I had to move to Queens.
I was going to say, were you in Bed-Stuy? Like, before Bed-Stuy is now
Bed-Stuy? I actually invented... Well, that's a rude thing to say, because there was people there, but... I did colonize Bushwick, I guess you could say. I was there before and people would be like, don't get off the train at Jefferson because it's really dangerous. And I was like, I live here.
Right.
So I took to riding my bike. That was a safer way to get around those days. But so Sotheby's was...
So did they give you an education at Sotheby's? Like, did they help you learn about wine? I mean, how did they raise you up?
Yeah, I mean, there was a wonderful department head named Serena Sutcliffe. She was like the head of it all out of London, and I liked her a lot. She's very inspiring. And I would read through the catalogs. I would actually put in codes, and they'd pop out a tasting note. So I'd have to read through the tasting note. So I was becoming very encyclopedic about like all kinds, like Burgundy. I became very good at Burgundy and Bordeaux, and it was definitely my job was kind of copy editing and like contract writing.
But were you tasting at this point?
Yeah.
Were you taking those notes? You weren't just filing them away in your head. Were you comparing and contrasting?
Yeah, so on like Friday afternoons, they would open something and we do blind tasting, which is, by the way, the best way to learn wine. Always do it blind. Whenever you have wine dinners with your friends, always blind, because that's how you learn your palate, I think. So they'd have a blind, like, open one thing, but then we'd have portfolio tastings. before like pre-auction tastings,
Sure.
and then I'd be able to taste. And I remember one night we had a pre-auction tasting, and there was like maybe 2 inches left in every bottle, and I packed up the bottles and I got a taxi and I called my friends down in the East Village and said, I'm coming over with all these really fancy wines. There's only like this much left in each bottle, but so that was
That sounds fun.
Yeah, 25 years old.
Right.
But yeah, then I ended up going to Acker Merrill. It's another competing auction house, and that was a totally different scene.
Better or?
Yeah, I mean, I think I had more fun there. But there...
Well, do you think you had more fun because you were more confident in your skills?
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, I was like tasting all the time with like the top wine, Steve Tanzer and Clive Coates. And I was invited to a lot of like hedge fund manager dinners on Park Avenue. And like, I think I was included in that scene readily because I was like young and really geeky, and I just had like tunnel vision around wine. So I just learned everything I could learn. Meanwhile, I had no money,
which is hard in the wine biz. So when I don't want to jump too far ahead, but at what point were you like, I need to go live in France. I need to go to Burgundy because that's where I want to learn everything that's happening.
Yeah. Well, before that happens, I opened a wine shop.
Okay.
And so contrast, I didn't know anything about affordable wine. I really didn't. And I would go to a local liquor store and look for like $10, $12 bottles that I could drink.
Right.
I could afford. And I remember tasting through a lot of the kind of, like, I hate to say it, but like there's a lot of commercial stuff out there that
just gives you a headache.
Well, to me, like, soften down, like they take red wines and put them through centrifuges and they soften the acidity and they put oak and like terrible. So I was starting to develop a appreciation for like Portuguese, like country wines from Portugal, things that I could afford that still appealed to my like highly trained palate and Burgundy and all the top stuff. So then I opened a retail store. I was moonlighting at Whole Foods in the cheese department, and a guy walked in and said he was trying to create a platter for Martha Stewart. She comes up a lot just because I watched her documentary last night, and yet she was like kind of woven through my story. And I said, well, why don't you do a Cher River goat cheese platter going west to east? We could do like Seltzer Cher, Valence. And he was like, who are you?
Right, who are you? Right.
And then he said, do you know anything about wine? And I was like, I know everything about wine. And he said, do you want to open a wine store? And so in Lower Manhattan, in what was just as the seaport, like the fishmongers were leaving to go to the Bronx, they were still there when we started, but it was an old swordfish store that we like gutted and put the tiles down. And then I started buying wine, and I met all the wholesalers. Okay. There's 350 in New York. That's a lot. That's why when I'm in Vermont and they're like, I have too many. I'm like, how many? 12. I'm like, oh, come on. But yeah, there is a lot. So I think I bought from about 100 distributors. Wow. Which was amazing. I learned like the world of wine. New York's like the preeminent wine
It is
market.
the epicenter.
It is,
for this country. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's always number one for me too.
Okay, so you open it up. Yeah. But I want to be able to move ahead. Okay. Because I want to get to your business as well.
Okay. I know this can go. I can go on forever.
I know, that's why I'm trying to push.
We got to get the Netflix.
But I want to get so. Not everybody picks up and says, I want to go live in wine
country.
So
I met a guy, a dude who was a French grower, and we met at a dinner, and he took a liking to me, and we started dating, and he lived in Burgundy, and he was a young, budding wine maker, and then I ended up moving in with him. And yeah, I mean, I would say never move for a man. It was a tough lesson, but I had such great experience. So I was like an illegal immigrant in France, and to make money.
How long were you there?
It's funny. I kind of went between like 2007 and 10. Okay. 4 years, something like that. I took a semester at the University of Bourgogne in Dijon, and I took a semester at the Institute of Touraine and Tours, so like Loire Valley and Burgundy. Wow. And he was so into it. All of his friends were winemakers, so I tasted everything. But I wrote a newsletter for like 7 years on European wines, and I would sell the wine to people in the U.S. So I had a whole system down, and that's how I survived and made money.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I was getting paid in the U.S., but I was living in France. It's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
I know. I'm an entrepreneur.
You are obviously an entrepreneur. So then...
Yeah. So then he breaks up with me, and I'm devastated, and I ended up coming back to the U.S. and getting a place in Bed-Stuy. Now I'm in Bed-Stuy, and then I got an opportunity to start the tri-state wholesale company.
Okay.
I was dragging the roller bag, so like a sales rep in New York. That's a really hard job. It's like a 40-pound roller bag on and off the subway.
Yeah.
And like you're in line in cattle calls with hundreds of other sales reps who are all competing for market share. And I actually was really good at it. I loved it because I knew wine, and that's a big skill.
Well, and I think for people who maybe aren't in the industry but maybe interested in what that skill is.
Yeah.
If you walk into a restaurant to sell wine, or you walk into a liquor store or a wine store to sell wine, you're trying to explain to that person why the wines you have, why they're marketable, why they're sellable, why people will order them or drink them or buy them.
Right, exactly. And there's a lot of fluff out there, and there's a lot of people that are myopic for their region, or there's a lot of commercially things that are kind of like, or there's like legit stuff.
Right.
So just to get to my business, so one day I was curating. I was in France. I would go back and forth. And a winemaker, I was at their farm, and it was a beautiful farm. It was like there was cows outside, and they had the muddy boots, and we were in the grange, like the barn. Everything was so perfect. And then, so they brought me out a tank sample with a sticker on it. Like, we just pulled this out of the tank, this little sample, and they wrote what it was on. And I was like, oh, that's so cute, a little bottle with a sticker with writing in French lettering.
Right.
How cute. And then they showed me their proprietary label. And I don't know if you agree, but there's a lot of really gaudy, like, it's great wine, bad package. I used to always tell friends this, like, they would say, Mary, what do I get at the liquor store? I'm like, I have no idea what's at your liquor store, but I do know if it's European, you don't recognize the words, and it has like terrible font and a gaudy package, and it's your price point, it's probably a good choice.
Okay.
If it's flashy and has like a leaping lizard on it, like, just avoid.
It's like when you travel abroad, don't go to restaurants that have pictures of food.
Right.
Outside.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You don't want to go there.
Laminated food
right,
pictures.
Exactly. Bad choice. Exactly.
But like with cheese, and also I tell people avoid like wines labeled according to the grape varietal. This is very controversial. Sorry, California, but
no, tell me. I want to know.
Well, I mean, it's like calling all cow milk cheese when you call it like Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc. I try to explain to people when you go to a place and you ask for the Sauvignon Blanc or the Chardonnay or Merlot or the 8 varietals everyone knows, you're missing the whole world of wine. You're just missing it all. And great wine, like there's so much overproduced Merlot out there, and a lot of it doesn't have a lot of character. And but if you order something according to where it's from, I think that like leads you down into paths.
Agreed.
And there's so many flavors on the ball we live on, and why would you limit yourself to these like
to a particular grape? Well,
exactly.
I think that's sort of wine education. How people think their palates are being trained.
Yeah.
They think it is Merlot, or they think, I don't like Chardonnay because I don't like oak. You know what I mean? So they think, but that's only specific to a very specific area in California.
Yeah,
that does that. Do you know what I mean? And over oaks, there are Chardonnays, for example. So no, I agree with you. Like knowing a region, whether it's Napa, Provence, or some little area. In South America, that is creating amazing wines. You're best off knowing the region.
Totally. And like Chardonnay from Chablis tastes so different than Macon, or there's different expressions of it.
I'm a big Mount Etna fan.
Oh, me too.
If there's anything from Mount Etna, white, black, green, gray, yellow, I'm like, I'll drink that because I just love that ashy.
Yeah.
Like there's some sort of like ashy, it's not even an aftertaste. There's just something about
I love it.
I
was on Mount Etna in June, and we had a Carricante that was mind-blowing, and I keep looking for it. But
okay, so you start, so you come back, you see this label.
So I see this
It sounds like an aha moment.
Yeah, there was, and I was like, gosh, someone should just streamline the appellation system so that there's like one brand, kind of like Neal's Yard Dairy.
Okay.
In London, if you've heard of it. It's like one brand, many
iterations,
but also like I take no credit for making. People call me the winemaker all the time, and I'm like, I make no wine. I can't. I don't even know how to make wine.
In fact, that's how I learned about you. They said you were a winemaker,
right?
And so when I was reading up on you, I was like, no.
I'm an importer, like all the other. There's like 1,600.
But you are I wish there was another word between maker and importer, because you are a wine.
I'm a wine
curator.
Curator. Or curator.
All right, curator. Okay, so let's go ahead. So let's talk about how the idea of the business came in.
Yeah, so I was like, gosh, someone should streamline the appellation system. So I said, I'm going to make a label, and I'm going to put a label on this person's wine and see if they'll sell it to me with my label.
Okay.
And they agreed, and my label didn't have my name on it at the time. But
what was the label?
It looks just like my label, except it didn't have my name on it or the vintage.
But in your label, so for people to understand, so you said to this winemaker, I want to sell this wine under my own label, basically, right?
Yeah.
And he said, sure.
Oh, they're fine with that.
Okay, great.
What do you need? Yeah.
Yes.
The beauty of it is...
But do you give love to them?
I put their name right on the front.
Okay.
But, I mean, I think that even if I didn't put their name on the front, they're fine. Artisan farmers, I mean... There's quite honestly an overproduction of wine right now. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of downward pressure on wine pricing. People just want to sell, and people want to do their artisan farming and make their goods. And they want to sell them and make money and feed their families. Like it's not really a huge ego thing. I mean, there's a huge side of wine that's all ego, but then there's this other side that's like working class farmers, and then those so I only work with people that farm and grow indigenous fruit, things that are local to their region, that's been there a long time, like on Etna, Carricante. Right. If you're ordering Chardonnay, you'll never taste the Carricante.
Right. So how did you go about, you put that label together?
Yeah.
And what did you do?
I called my friend. She's the art director for Doubleday now, but she was then at like Random House, Emily Mahan. She's amazing. Okay. So she's like a kerner. So her font skills are very good. So she puts this label together, and I slap it on the bottle and I start selling it. And then my business fell apart, my wholesale business, and I got bought out. And the ex-partner ended up taking the label and convincing the winery that they were going to continue with it. And I called, and the winery said, "Oh, we're going to go with them." And I said, "What?" So that
must have been devastating.
No, I know. And that's, I mean, you talk about being a female in the business without, just getting out there without a lot of mentorship.
I know we haven't even delved into what that part was like, but go ahead.
But so I, out of like frustration, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to let anybody be confused anymore. And I had to make the label different because they were complaining that my new iteration looked too similar. So I just put my name, Mary Taylor, right on the front. Normally importers put their name on the back.
Right.
But I was like, why don't we have a brand with grower wines? So that happened, and I released it, and it started selling really well.
Who did you go to for that first bottle that was that had the Mary Taylor name on it?
Yeah, so this is awesome. There's this LGBT community in the southwest of France who make my Bordeaux Blanc and Rouge and my Gascon. There's this amazing community of people, and so I went to them. The community, right? And I got my Bordeaux Blanc. I think it's better than the one that I had before. Okay. And I got my Bordeaux Rouge, which is one of my favorite wines in my portfolio because it's an unoaked, bright red fruit, like elegant. It captures the classic nature of Bordeaux. Bordeaux, sadly, is going modern. A lot of it because they're not.
What does that mean?
Modern, like international modern style winemaking is like they extract it, they make it, they beef it up a little bit, they put oak, they soften it down. Like they just do a lot of things that you might find on the Central Coast. And so it's unidentifiable as Bordeaux after they finish messing with it. And I like wine that are pure and crunchy and farmed without chemicals, but also made without any additives or and none of my reds have oak at all. So I'm like totally about the pure, like natural, mineral.
Because it sounds more, because that's how it was done, right?
Yeah, I mean, I want to taste something that's unique. And what the international style of wine just makes wine from the Douro or South Africa or Bordeaux or Tuscany all taste the same. When you put big oak on it and you extract it, it just tastes the same.
It all tastes the same.
Napa to wherever.
So how did you go about, so now you have this business.
Yep.
And so how did you go about deciding what your ethos was? What you wanted, I mean, we're sort of getting into it a little bit, but what were your ethos and how you went about, because how many How many brands do you have?
Yeah, so I have
how many SKUs?
42 SKUs.
Okay.
Which is a lot under the Mary Taylor label.
Right.
And I have 3 different series, like my entry level, which are around $12.99. Then I have my mid series around $15, $16, and then my high end is between like $24 and $32.
I mean, all of them
are affordable.
Are really affordable.
I was tired.
Incredibly affordable.
Working in the super fine wine business, I was like, they don't need me, and my skills, I want to bring my skills to the like regular people.
But so I have a question on that, and I asked this. I had Wynn Robertson, who's the som up at Bourbon Steak,
nice,
and I had him on a couple weeks ago, and I said, how do you as a som sell a really good $60 bottle of wine to a jerk, like, you know, to a guy or girl who is like, no, the only wines that are $500 are worth it. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Well, then sell
you're
the
looking at me,
$500
right?
wine.
You're like, sell it that way. But I mean, when it comes to you,
yeah,
selling your really good wines that are reasonably priced, do you get pushback because they're reasonably priced?
Well, it depends. I mean, the labels are so elegant. People say they look a lot fancier than they cost. They are. I mean, I'm happy. We're kind of gangsters. So my company is based in New Haven, Connecticut.
Right.
We have a warehouse. Most importers are based in New Jersey because they work in the public warehouses, which are like 4 times more expensive. We like cut all these costs, and it's me and 2 women that run the company and a warehouse manager now. So it's 4 of us, and we sell in 8 countries and in 47 states.
That's amazing.
So like we're definitely so we never import less than a full 1,400 case container. That's 40 foot.
Okay.
And we just like keep our costs low by doing volume. So we said we're going to be a volume player, even though like none of our wines are super huge production. It's just that we have 42 of them, so we can kind of mix and match, and they all look the same, although they're all completely different and they read differently. They have the different grower names right on them.
Well, so let's talk about grower, because when I hear grower, my head immediately goes to Champagne.
Okay.
Grower Champagne.
Yeah.
They made a huge pitch on that a
love
couple of years
Champagne.
ago. Me too. Because it's more about the farmer and the wine that they're making than some big house that's just going to basically give you the same wine every year.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The consistency of it.
Totally.
So how did you go about curating the people that you now celebrate through your brand?
Yeah, so I look for working class growers and farmers. So like, for example, I have a wine called Valence, which is also a cheese appellation. It's the only one that's both cheese and wine appellation. And I met the woman who makes the wine at the Loire Valley Wine Fair. I could see her from across the room. She looked very sweet but humble, like she hadn't left the woods for a while, you know? And she had these kind of like, I didn't think her labels were attractive. And I just could tell, like, maybe. So I walked over and she showed me her Touraine wines that were labeled according to varietal. And I figured out where she was in Valence appellation. And I said, do you have a Valence wine? Like just Valence AOP? And she was like, wow. And she grabbed something by her feet, put it on the table, said, I didn't expect you to ask me that.
Okay.
I tasted it. It was a blend of Pinot Gamay and Co, which is Malbec, made on Silex soil, like unbelievably good. And she said, this is our Valence wine. And I said, hey, would you care to work together? She goes, whatever you want.
Right.
I just want to sell the wine. And it's one of our absolute best wines.
Really?
I'm so excited. So yeah, I met her there. A lot of wine fairs, a lot of different ways of.
But do you ever taste somebody's wine, especially when they're blends, and say, you know, if there was a little bit more effect. Okay, I wanted to know how hands-on you were.
Oh, a lot. I have a lot of the Mary Taylor blends. So some people worry that my brand is like a recreation of wine that's already out there in a different package. It's just the same wine repackaged.
But it's not.
No, it's not. I get really into the blending. Like our biggest seller is a Côte de Gascon.
Okay.
And that they have a couple wines that they produce and release in their label. They sell a little bit. I think they sell like one guy in Portland, Oregon, but normally like in Germany and elsewhere. We're definitely their second biggest customer in the world. But I said I'd like my blend to take out the Sauvignon Blanc. And they said, come on, can we keep it in? And I was like, because they grow it and I want to be nice to them and support what they're doing. And so the first year I said 10%, and no, this year it's only 5%. So
okay, you're winnowing it down. You're getting rid of it.
More Colombard, more Uni Blanc, and more Gros Manseng, which are the grapes in this blend. And we sell something like 12,000 cases.
Wow.
That's like, 144,000 bottles. I mean,
That's
it's a huge product. We are their definitely biggest customer. Well, actually, there's one other bigger customer. Okay. But her name's Kylie Minogue, but we won't. They do her rosé for her.
Okay. That's okay. That's a good competitor to have. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
Okay, so let's talk about being a woman in the industry.
Yeah, for sure.
Because for a long time, I mean, I haven't even looked at any of my questions that I picked out for you.
I can go on forever.
For a long time, women got no respect in wine, right?
Anywhere.
I mean, well, or anywhere, but like in the wine industry, especially, you know, having a palate, being able to discuss wines, especially I think about when you were at the auction houses and talking with some of the big players in the room. Like, how'd you grow a thick skin on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing just to say, and I'll get to that, but we were at Provine. I had a booth last week in Germany at the biggest wine fair in the world, and we had women-owned, finance-funded sign, and a guy walked up and he said, well, I don't discriminate. And I said, well, my grandmother couldn't have a credit card. And
right. Good answer.
Here I am with an international wine empire. But anyway, but so
good for you.
Yeah, thank you.
No, but I mean, like, I don't discriminate. I mean, it's really easy for you to say that. Yes.
But no, I mean, I think I was just so laser focused on my career. I do think I was invited into some spaces because I was like young and I maybe attractive and very knowledgeable about a subject. So like those were all fun things for the host. Right. I definitely probably drank a lot of wines for free, being, you know, like, so I did have those advantages. But yeah, I mean, it's funny. I get a lot of heat. Like, who does she think she is with the label? Like, why people
from who? I just want to know from who.
Well, let's say like the hipsters. Because I had to sell wine to the hipsters in Brooklyn. That we got in a few arguments about the nature of natural wine. It's fine, but when they saw my brand, a few people saw my brand. I heard some feedback saying, gosh, that's so commercial. Why would you commercialize wine? And why would you take credit away from the growers and their artistic expression and put your name on it? And I was like, well, yes, it's commercial. That's the point, isn't it?
Right, I'm selling it. It is a business.
And I'm paying them, and they're happy. But also, like, I'm trying to reach the Kim Crawford people. Like, there's so many examples of people asking for the Mary Taylor wines, and they don't know. Like, I was in Connecticut the other day, and a woman said, and I'll get to your question. Yeah. She said, oh my God, you're Mary Taylor. I just bought 2 of your wines. They're on the counter. Oh my God. And I said, well, which ones? And she got all embarrassed and was like, I don't know which they're called. And I was like, that's okay. Let's see. And it was a Costière de Nîmes and a Coteau de Genois. There's no way I expect Pamela in like Old Saybrook, Connecticut to be able to say those words, but she can say Mary Taylor. Yes. So I've just helped her not pick up the Kim Crawford or the Oyster Bay, but pick up like wines from real families in Europe that have been doing this for generations. So
which I love.
I was like, you are the mission that I'm on.
Yes. She really like. That's like a case study.
Right. But like nobody complains that Kermit Lynch's name is on a bottle. And yet if Mary Taylor, who does she think she is? And so my answer is, I think I'm 32 years in the wine business on so many levels. I've been fortunate to learn this industry from every angle. I have literally so much cred. I have an MBA. I pay my bills early. I don't know. Who do I think I am? I'm a good business owner. And and I've earned my...
I think I said this when we were off air. Who are you? You're Mary Taylor.
Yeah, I'm Mary Taylor. So
that's your stamp. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's your stamp. That's who you are. People trust you. You built this massive business. I don't know. That's fascinating to me. And I think as women, we're kind of... Like, when I started my business... I didn't call it The List Are You On It.com by Nycci Nellis or Foodie and the Beast by Nycci Nellis, or it is Industry Night now with Nycci Nellis. But like the truth is my brand is Nycci Nellis. And I think it took me over 20 years to sort of own it because it felt like Gwyneth Paltrow didn't call Goop Gwyneth Paltrow. Like so many people are afraid to put their name on things because as women, I think we tend to know that we're going to get blowback on it, where men don't, you know?
And actually, I learned the hard way because I had started a couple projects and people took the project and didn't give me credit and said I was just some crazy woman that had, claimed ownership, and I actually did own it. So, you can call it, I love that podcast, Lena Dunham's, the C word.
Right.
How to cut a woman's entire credibility down in one word. Crazy.
Right. I was thinking of the other word, but yes.
Yeah. No, this.
There's lots of C words for women.
You should check out the show. It's great. I don't know if she's still doing it, but it's so good. But yeah, no, I definitely feel that people have questioned my credibility, but I don't know many people that have had these opportunities, and I think I have a good palate, and I'm also down for helping other women get ahead. I mentor.
Well, let's talk about the winemakers that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Are there a lot of women winemakers? How do you feel about natural wine? Before we check out, because natural wine is, first of all, having minority and women winemakers on your wine list or in your store, very, now it's a huge selling point. It's a big deal, and I applaud it. Like, it's no different than putting your name on it, right? Like,
right.
We need to applaud women and people in BIPOC, LGBTQ who are in the industry who don't get the money or the notice as much. So any way we can help them, I'm for. But also, you brought up natural wines, which for some reason is like a real push point for people. There's a lot of sides to it. So I'm just sort of curious where you stand on all of that stuff.
Yeah, I was part of this early growers that were working with no chemicals and doing so in a sort of spiritual way, and I loved all that. I used to go to wine fairs in the Loire Valley years and years ago. I loved Joe Dresner. He was a huge mentor of mine. I'm interested in natural wine, but then I feel that there was a couple of years there where people were showing up with wines that were full of acetone and a little bit
real acetone,
acetic acid. It would turn acetic because the no sulfur thing would go off, and they weren't you have to make wine with no sulfur. You have to be on your tanks all the time. Sure. But there's a few wines that were released and they weren't proper, and they tasted mousy or different, funky, and then they were served at pretty expensive price points, and I was like, this is not good. And if I pushed back, I would be called well, these aren't conventional. There was a lot of elitism around wines that weren't made properly. There's a great essay on Dresner's website by John Paul Brun, who was a fabulous natural winemaker, but he rails against the hipster trend to make wines that are not, that are full of Brettanomyces, bacteria, weird acids that are gone off, and call those legit or cool. I found that to be a little elitist, I think it turned people away. And I'm definitely pro wine. I've got a big sweatshirt that says wine, like a college sweatshirt. I wear it proudly. Right. I don't like beer as much. I don't like cocktails. I think wine is the ultimate beverage.
I agree.
My dad.
Next to tea and wine.
Tea, well, and coffee for me. But I'm team wine for sure. So I just things that push people away from wine and things that make wine harder to access, I think, are not ideal.
I agree with you on that. I think wine should be approachable.
Totally.
And everybody should have access to it.
Totally. But industrial is one side and ultra natty
good
is
wine.
the other.
Let me change it.
Middle.
Right? Good wine.
Yeah.
Right? And there are I always think back to my husband and I took our children to Umbria a couple of years ago, and we were staying in a house there, and they had a house, there was a vineyard right outside, and they made wine from it, and it was $6.
Were they growing Sagrantino?
Yes, they were.
That's my favorite.
Oh my God, because it's delicious. But I mean, we would just $6.
Yeah, amazing.
We were I don't get it.
No, I know. And it's I saw one of my wines, I won't say who, but
okay,
that is $15 retail at a restaurant for $85. Oh. And I was like, this is a problem, y'all. I know you need to make that margin, but when it's all on the wine,
it's too much.
I want to drink several bottles of wine and enjoy myself.
I know.
And not feel like I've, spent $1,000.
Agreed.
So,
All right, we're gonna have to wrap
all right,
up.
okay.
So
That was fun. Thanks.
it was fun. Okay, so before I wrap it up, tell everybody where they can find you online, where they can find you on Instagram, and how we can get in on one of your 40 different wines.
Yeah, for sure. So Mary Taylor Wine is my Instagram handle, and a little bit of Facebook. And then my website is mt.wine. I have a .wine. People can't handle this, but it's true.
I can handle it.
.wine.
Okay.
And on my website, you can put your zip code in most states, the ones that report back to me where they sell. I sell to wholesalers who then sell to retailers. So and you can put your zip code and it'll tell you where the restaurants and wine stores are that have ordered our wine in the past 3 months. So that's about as best as I try to do. But
that's pretty good.
I think the best thing anyone could do if they're interested is go to your local wine shop and ask them to carry our wines, because that will help us out a lot.
Well, and is there any wine specifically right now that you're really hot on that you're carrying that you're like, you should definitely try?
Yeah, I mean,
this white and this red.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh. We have a Touraine Sauvignon Blanc, which is incredible.
Okay.
I call it's a little bit of slutty Sauvignon Blanc, but it's made in like pure chalky limestone, and it tastes like the Touraine. Tastes like a Loire Valley castle. And then a red, I have this really geeky thing from down in the Aude, which is an old vine Carignan made in cement by a woman who's about 80 years old, and her vines are about 80 years old.
Okay.
It's called Coteau de Cabaret. It's a hard name, but that's why I streamlined, to make it easier on people.
Right. Oh my God, so cool. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
I'll have to send you some bottles.
I know, so great chatting with you, and I want to thank you all for joining me today. I'm Nycci Nellis. This is Industry Night. Everything you heard here today you can find on the list or youwantit.com, or follow me at NYCCINELLIS on all the platforms. If you have questions for Mary, of course, just drop them on any of my platforms and I will certainly get them to you. And everything else will be in the show notes as well. So thanks so much for joining me today. Go get a glass of Mary Taylor wine somewhere, please.
Definitely.
And have a delicious week.
Produced by Heartcast Media.